If you think you already know how the story of ice and fire ends, guess again, because the winds of winter are blowing.
Your false king is dead, bastard. He and all his host were smashed in 7 days of battle. I have his magic sword. Tell his red whore. Your false king's friends are dead. Their heads are upon the walls of Winterfell. Come see them, bastard. Your false king lied, and so did you. You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall. Instead, you sent him to Winterfell to steal my bride from me. I will have my bride back. If you want Mance Rayder back, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the North to see, proof of your lies. The cage is cold, but I have made him a warm cloak from the skins of the 6 whores who came with him to Winterfell. I want my bride back. I want the false king's queen. I want his daughter and his red witch. I want his wildling princess. I want his little prince, the wildling babe. And I want my reek. Send them to me, bastard, and I will not trouble you or your black crows. Keep them from me, and I will cut out your bastard's heart and eat it. Ramsay Bolton, trueborn lord of Winterfell. So, is this fake news? Is the battle already over? Did Stannis lose? Is Lightbringer okay?
It's fake news. I'm calling it, I think this is fake news. I think Ramsay wrote the letter, but I think he's lying about a lot of this stuff, just to be incendiary. So that's my personal take on this.
You know, actually, no matter who wrote it, I think we can count on the fact that there are some things that are true and some things that are false in there. It's really just a game of sussing out which one. And we're actually not going to try to decide and figure out the pink letter. Just kind of a good way to introduce all the things that are going on with Winterfell. We will refer to it a couple times, but we're going to entertain both the possibility that Mance wrote it or that Ramsay wrote it, which seems to be the two strongest possibilities. You know, I wouldn't get through an episode like this without mentioning my boy Mance Raydar. Never gonna Mance again. Anyways, I am wearing the reindeer horns in honor of Stannis of the Fiery Heart. Well, I got my winter Stannis on here. Got my fur. Battle of Winterfell. It's very cold. It's very cold.
Fiery heart of R'hllor will keep you warm.
And Quinn is just rolling as fashionable as he always does with the hat. Very nice.
Yes.
And here we are. Talk about the Battle of Winterfell. So, guys, this is a big episode as far as like the Battle of Winterfell. There's a lot of forces at play here. We are not going to try to do like the military strategist expert breakdown. We're going to go right to the main actions and talk about the characters involved and what they might be doing with their beating hearts in conflict and stuff like that. So just to get right to it, we've got a Bolton Alliance that holds Winterfell, but it is fractured and unruly. A lot of the lords aren't, really loyal to the Boltons out of anything other than the fact that they're forced to. Some of them have hostages at stake. Other ones are just sort of going with the winning hand right now, but looking for an opportunity to turn on them. The Freys and the Manderlys are at each other's throats. Literally, someone slashed poor Wyman across one of his 3 chins, and all hell is almost about to break loose.
I thought he was dead in that scene. I was like, is he dead? But yeah.
And we'll get to that Frey Pie quote, but Wyman is kind of awesome in these last chapters, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So Stannis Baratheon is about 3 miles away, near a lake, an ice lake. And then you also got Moore's Crowfoot Umber and his green boys causing chaos outside of Winterfell. They're digging a bunch of traps. And at the same time, you've got his brother on the inside, whose loyalty may be questionable, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And then, of course, Theon helped Jane Poole escape, and he is now with Stannis. And then, of course, you've got Asha, the Ironborn, and Tycho the Bravo Sea, also there. Tycho with his weird hat. Then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, the quote, the pink letter, and all the questionable stuff about that. What's true, what's not. About to see it all unfold. So, yeah.
All right, so we're going to run through not all of the forces at play, but a few of the major ones that we want to talk about today. With the first being House Manderly and good old Wyman. And really, this is just one of the best and most macabre pieces of writing in all of A Dance with Dragons or A Song of Ice and Fire. And so we're going to give you the Frey Pie quote. Here it is. The Lord of White Harbor had furnished the food and drink, black stout and yellow beer, and wines red and gold and purple, brought up from the warm south on fat-bottomed ships and aged in his deep cellars. The wedding guests gorged on cod cakes and winter squash, hills of neeps and great round wheels of cheese, on smoking slabs of mutton and beef ribs charred almost black, and lastly on 3 great wedding pies as wide across as wagon wheels, their flaky crusts stuffed to bursting with carrots, onions, turnips, parsnips, mushrooms, and chunks of seasoned pork swimming in a savory brown gravy. Ramsay hacked off slices with his falchion, and Wyman Manderly himself served, presenting the first steaming portions to Roose Bolton and his fat Frey wife, the next to Sir Hostine and Sir Aenys, the sons of Walder Frey. "The best pie you've ever tasted, my lords," the fat lord declared. "Wash it down with arbor gold and savor every bite. I know I shall." True to his word, Manderly devoured 6 portions, 2 of each from the 3 pies, smacking his lips and slapping his belly and stuffing himself, until the front of his tunic was half brown with gravy stains, and his beard was flecked with crumbs of crust. Even fat Walder Frey could not match his gluttony, though she did manage 3 slices herself.
Yeah, I love the idea of Frey Pie. That was one of the things that I actually kind of like chuckled at when they brought it into the show. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. The execution of it in the show was kind of like whatever. But yeah, I love the whole thought of Frey Pie. It reminds me of the story of the Rat Cook, which is obviously intentional. It's George R.R. Martin, because you have the cook baking the king's son into pie and serving it to him and it being like so delicious. But then you've got the cook who's punished for it by the gods because what he did is heinous. So it relates to them in that way too, because the Freys will be punished for what they've done by the gods, by fate or universe or whatever.
Yeah, Manderly is very clever. He knows about the laws of the old gods, and so he doesn't kill the Freys under his own roof. He gives them guest gifts when they depart. And the whole idea of giving a guest gift signifies that like he's no longer a guest. It's one of those sneaky things that sounds great, but it means you're no longer officially under my roof. And so somewhere on the way from White Harbor to Winterfell, 3 Freys, one of which was Rhaegar Frey, it's really great.
Rhaegar.
Preening cockawhoop if there ever was one. They disappear on the way to Winterfell, and then there are these 3 pies. And I just love the line about like Wyman just like pigging out with the stains on his shirt. And it just sounds so very Deep One and Merling. And of course the White Harbor, all the Manderlys have a lot of Deep One symbolism. They have that pale corpse-like skin almost, him and his kids, and they're big boned and bald. And of course the merman's court symbolism. And then here he is just like pigging out on these Frey pies, and like it's just delightful, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've confessed to liking that. In any case,
it's delightful, but really messed up.
It's messed up, but yeah, that's George R. R. Martin doing the horror thing that he loves to do. So the other part about the Manderlys that we need to remember is that, of course, they sent Davos away to rescue Rickon from Skagos and the cannibals. And of course, we got an episode coming on that, the Horny Goats. But everybody thinks, including Stannis, thinks that he executed Davos. So that is a political thing that's going to come up. There's definitely foreshadowing that the Manderlys could go over to Stannis here, but they will need to clear up a little bit about Davos. So that's it. We'll talk more about the Manderlys in a second, but that's sort of the setup for them. Now, as far as Roose goes, there's a cool line that Lady Barbrey gives to Theon about Roose's motives, which kind of sums up where he's at right now. So this starts off where Lady Dustin is basically saying, of course he knows that Wyman is waiting to betray him.
You think Roose does not know? Silly boy, watch him. Watch how he watches Manderly. No dish so much as touches Roose's lips until he sees Lord Wyman eat of it first. No cup of wine is sipped until he sees Manderly drink of the same cask. I think he would be pleased if the fat man attempted some betrayal. It would amuse him. Roose has no feelings, you see. Those leeches that he loves so well sucked all the passions out of him years ago. He does not love, he does not hate, he does not grieve. This is a game to him, mildly diverting. Some men hunt, some hawk, some tumble dice. Roose plays with men. You and me, these Freys, Lord Manderly, his plump new wife, even his bastard. We are all but his playthings. A serving man was passing by. Lady Dustin held out her wine cup and let him fill it, then gestured for him to do the same for Theon. "Truth be told," she said, "Lord Bolton aspires to more than mere lordship. Why not King of the North? Tywin Lannister is dead, the Kingslayer is maimed, the Imp is fled. The Lannisters are a spent force, and you were kind enough to rid him of the Starks. Old Walder Frey will not object to his fat little Walda becoming a queen. White Harbor might prove troublesome should Lord Wyman survive this coming battle, but I am quite sure he will not. No more than Stannis. Roose will remove both of them as he removed the young wolf. Who else is there?"
All right, so Lady Dustin, she's quite an interesting figure. Where exactly do her allegiances lie, right? So it seems like she's a big candidate for someone that would move over to Team Stannis in the end of all this pretty quickly.
It's like she's saying, look, Roose knows this a lot. He has no illusions. He knows that half of these people are waiting to betray him. He knows that all these people hate the Freys. He does not hold illusions. So that's something I want to keep in the back pocket as far as Roose. Like, Lady Dustin is very perceptive. She's given us the truth here. So Roose might do something terrible in order to save, like he might sacrifice Ramsay, close the gates on him, if he, or anything like that. Like, you got to keep your eye on Roose. He's very low key, but he's capable of great evil, and he's not going to be fooled by anybody.
That's what makes Roose very creepy to me. I've always felt like there was something deeper about him that's just waiting underneath. I remember one of the most vivid moments about him is with all the leeches and stuff. When he's like got all the leeches on, and it's like his pale skin and his like silver eyes almost. Just a really weird looking figure. And just, so I'm curious to see what's up with him. What he does.
Shout out to the bolt-on theory. The bolt-on is the perfect event horizon of like tinfoil and like just enough there to make you wonder. I mostly think that George is softly implying the Dracula sort of vampire vibe with them, but bolt-on is
Taylor. Dracul, House of Dracul. Yeah.
Dracula. Yeah, the bolt-on theory is delightful. Go look that up if you don't know what that is. Just put bolt-on, ice and fire, Roose Bolton. You'll find it. He's an immortal skin changer, folks.
Good stuff.
So, and then as far as getting back to Lady Barbrey, like you said, she is one of the most powerful lords left. She is very wise. She sees through all the stuff that's going on. And during that last quote that ended off with Theon saying, "Who else is there, besides Roose?" Or she says, "Who else is there besides Roose?" And then Theon answers, "You. There's you, the Lady of Barrowton, a Dustin by marriage, a Riswell by birth." And it says, "That pleased her. She took a sip of wine, her dark eyes sparkling, and she said, 'The widow of Barrowton, and yes, if I so choose, I could be an inconvenience.' Of course, Roose sees that too, so he takes care to keep me sweet." So again, everybody knows what's going on here,
She's got some ambitions and she's definitely got smarts. I mean, you don't get this far in life, especially if you're a woman in this society, unless you know what's up, kind of. So, like, she definitely strikes me as someone that is definitely looking at this thing from all angles, and she's going to do what's best for her in the end.
And then, of course, she has an enormous grudge chip on her shoulder, the size of Atlas, concerning the Starks and Ned, right?
Yeah, that was the first time reading. I'm just like, whoa, what happened? What's your deal? What's your issue? What is that all about? There is something more there that I guess we'll see later on. But yeah, I'm curious about that a lot.
And of course, the quick backstory on that is that she was in love with Brandon Stark, Ned's older brother. Brandon took her maidenhood and then got betrothed to the Tullys. Basically, she thought that maybe she was going to get betrothed to the Starks. And to Brandon, that her house was definitely worthy of marrying the Starks. She had the status to do it, but instead, Rickard, under the advice of his maester, which is another thing that Lady Dustin's really worked up about, she hates the maesters, engaged Brandon to Catelyn Stark. And then later, of course, Ned took up that wedding alliance. But Barbrey hates the maesters and hates like Rickard and Ned. And she's just really got a big grudge about all that. She swears never to let Eddard's bones make it through the neck if she finds them. And yeah, she lays out the Grand Maester conspiracy, quote unquote. And that's another theory you've got to go look up on your own if you want that. But basically, it's the idea that the Maesters are working together and coordinating things. And she says, if I were queen, the first thing I would do would be to kill all the gray rats. She goes on to point out that the maester who encouraged Rickard to marry Brandon to Catelyn and formed that Stark-Tully alliance right before the War of the Five Kings was a Hightower. And she thinks she's like, yeah, Hightowers, that's where Old Town is, where the Citadel is. And she basically is implying that the Hightowers helped orchestrate Robert's rebellion and the War of the Five Kings, which is kind of a thing, just by itself. But that's not the Battle of Ice. So just an aside for now, but it's just something to file away here. And we are going to see some maesterly deception with Stannis and the Dreadfort Maester in just a minute. But let's talk about the Umbers.
All right. So first off, we got Mors Crowfood Umber. And this is a quote of Theon talking about him to Stannis after jumping off of the Winterfell wall with Jane Poole and escaping. Crowfood, Theon remembered, an old man huge and powerful with a ruddy face and a shaggy white beard. He had been seated on a garron, clad in the pelt of a gigantic snow bear, its head his hood. Under it, he wore a stained white leather eye patch that reminded Theon of his uncle Euron. He'd wanted to rip it off Umber's face to make certain that underneath was only an empty socket and not a black eye shining with malice. So that's super cool. He's got his cloak thing is like a bear. It's a bear, and and the head is his hood, and he's got an eye patch, and he's a menacing character compared to Euron himself, the Crow's Eye himself, and it's cool, interesting that he's also called Crowfood, Crow's Eye, Crowfood. That's cool, but yeah,
and actually, so under that eye patch is a piece of dragon glass. That is what he stuck in his eye socket. And for those of you who remember my older symbolism podcasts, this is anytime you see a one-eyed person like Euron or Bloodraven, we're talking about Odin. It means this person is either a wizard or they symbolize a wizard. Basically, you could take Mors Crowfood and compare his symbolism to Bloodraven. And these are like the northern winter version of Odin, but there's always this hint of a dragon, right? So Bloodraven is a dragon, but he's in the north. And his sigil is also a white dragon. Then you have Mors Crowfood. He's all about the north. He's from the House Umber, but he's got dragon glass and eye. And a dragon glass eye, think about it, like glass candles, obsidian, dragon glass, they are used to see. So a dragon glass eye is basically just another way of talking about like magic fire vision and stuff like that. And just to be clear, I'm not saying Mors Crowfood is a wizard. This is all symbolism and archetypes and stuff. He's a witch. She's a witch.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about how he's terrorizing the people inside Winterfell from outside Winterfell. And there's also a cool quote about this.
Then he heard the horn, a long, low moan. It seemed to hang above the battlements, lingering in the black air, soaking deep into the bones of every man who heard it. All along the castle walls, sentries turned toward the sound, their hands tightening around the shafts of their spears. In the ruined halls and keeps of Winterfell, lords hushed other lords, horses nickered, and sleepers stirred in their dark corners. No sooner had the sound of the war horn died away than a drum began to beat. Boom doom, boom doom, boom doom, and a name passed from the lips of each man to the next, written in small white puffs of breath. Stannis, they whispered. Stannis is here. Stannis has come. Stannis, Stannis, Stannis.
All right, so he's just blowing the horn, being really annoying, and he's trying to draw them out. So they fall into the traps that he's setting, which we'll get into in just a second.
There you go.
Yeah, but he's being really annoying, and it's interesting because this is the same thing that Ramsay did to Theon. When Theon was holding Winterfell, he was blowing the horn over and over and over again, just being really annoying. And it's kind of like a disheartening thing. It's meant to like unsettle them and just make them like kind of anxious, and battle is coming. So it's really funny.
It is definitely funny. And the serious thing to take here is that they are afraid of Stannis. Much like where we saw the siege of King's Landing, the Battle of the Blackwater. Everyone is scared of Stannis. He worships a demon god. No one is sure what's going on. They burn people. They seem to have actual magic. He claims to be Azor High. He's got Lightbringer. Like, he loses at Blackwater, then turns up at the Wall, and then turns up at Winterfell. Like, people are just like, this guy won't die. What is this deal? And so now all of a sudden he's outside Winterfell when he should have died in the snowstorm on the march. It's actually Crowfood, but the people inside think it's Stannis. And essentially it is, because Crowfoot is allied with Stannis. He's an outrider, essentially. He's an advanced force. So
Yeah, Stannis is quite formidable, and we'll get to that in a little bit later when we talk specifically about Stannis as well. But yeah, Stannis is an imposing figure.
he's cold motherfucker too, man. He's just like
Yeah.
Theon's trying to scare him about Ramsay, and he's like, psh, let him come, whatever.
I mean, just look at the situation with Davos, right? How Davos saved him, and he still had to punish him by chopping off his fingers, right? So he's
messed
cold.
up, man.
Yeah,
I still say that is a mess. That is really messed up. But like you said, Crowfoot is setting traps. He's digging pits and then covering them. And they've already taken a victim with one of the Freys, which we'll get to. But there's a cool line that when Theon is recalling meeting Mors Crowfoot outside the walls after just having jumped off with Jane Poole, it says, "What he might have said or done next, Theon never learned, for that was when the boy ran up, clutching a spear and shouting that the portcullis on Winterfell's main gate was rising," meaning that some Frey soldiers were coming out of the castle. And it says, "And how Crowfoot had grinned at that." So here's a guy, an old dude with nothing but green boys, and there's an actual army on horses coming out of the gates, and he's like rubbing his hands together like, we're going to kill those MFers. Like, this is a bad man.
Yeah, he's ready for him. He's so excited by this too. I love how excited he is. Like, he's having the time of his life. He's like, I'm ready to take these bastards down.
Yeah, old guys in the north, they don't give an F. They really don't. They're like, they go out and they wander off into the snow when times are tough anyways, just so they don't have an extra mouth to feed. So
exactly,
they're ready to die.
About that. It's the north, and the people in the north are hard because you have to be hard to live in the north. Just period. If you're not, you don't live. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough. So, and then like you said, we've got another Umber inside the walls, and this is Horsebane. And Horsebane Umber is Mors' brother. And where Mors took the green boys, Horsebane took the old men, the graybeards, if you will, and they are inside the castle. And the quote here, it says, this is Lady Dustin talking, and she's talking shit to Aenys Frey here. And she says, "And Lord Wyman is not the only man who lost kin at your red wedding, Frey. Do you imagine Horsebane loves you any better? If you did not hold the Great John, he would pull out your entrails and make you eat them, as Lady Hornwood ate her fingers. Flints, Serwins, Tallhearts, Slates, they all had men with the young wolf. House Riswell too," said Roger Riswell. "Even Dustin's out of Barrowton." Lady Dustin parted her lips in a thin, feral smile. "The North remembers, Frey."
Mm-hmm.
So,
You see, yeah, that's another point to her being very perceptive, right? The Freys are hated, like just really hated, and she sees like all of this could just fall apart at any time, and I see it like the writing is on the wall pretty much. And then of course he's Mors' brother, so his loyalty is more to his brother obviously than anybody else. So yeah,
and nope, there's no reason for anybody to like Roose. So, so the point is, the only thing holding Horsebane to the Bolton Alliance is the idea that the Freys hold the Great John. But if something were to happen to the Freys that were there, then that might evolve. That situation might evolve. So
that's rough.
all right. So with that said, let's talk about the Stannis with the Planis and get into what Stannis is actually going to do here at the fight. So we're going to start off with this absolutely hysterical quote where Stannis is sussing out the treachery of the Dreadfort Maester. And this is just a good little slice of pure Stannis comedy. We had to get a little bit of that Stannis ambiance for this episode. And I would say that this quote here, this is why people like Stannis. So here we go.
"Tell me then, where are these two trained to fly?" Maester Tybalt did not answer. Theon Greyjoy kicked his feet feebly and laughed under his breath. "Caught! Answer me. If we were to loose these birds, would they return to the Dreadfort?" The king leaned forward. "Or might they fly for Winterfell instead?" Maester Tybalt pissed his robes. Theon could not see the dark stains spreading from where he hung, but the smell of piss was sharp and strong. "Maester Tybalt has lost his tongue," Stannis observed to his knights. "Godry, how many cages did you find?" "3, your grace," said the big knight in the silvered breastplate. "One was empty." "Your grace, my order is sworn to serve. I know all about your vows. What I want to know is what was in the letter you sent to Winterfell. Did you perchance tell Lord Bolton where to find us?" Sire, Round-shouldered Tybalt drew himself up proudly. The rules of my order forbid me to divulge the contents of Lord Onarf's letters. Your vows are stronger than your bladder, it would seem. Your Grace must understand. Must I? The king shrugged. If you say so. You are a man of learning, after all. I had a maester on Dragonstone who was almost a father to me. I have great respect for your order and its vows. Sir Clayton does not share my feelings, though. He learned all he knows in the winds of Fleabottom. Were I to put you in his charge, he might strangle you with your own chain or scoop your eye out with a spoon. Only the one, your grace, volunteered the balding knight, him of the winged pig. I'd leave t'other. How many eyes does a maester need to read a letter? Asked Stannis. One should suffice, I'd think. I would not wish to leave you unable to fulfill your duties to your lord. Roose Bolton's men may well be on their way to attack us even now, however, so you must understand if I skimp on certain courtesies. I will ask you once again, what was in the message you sent to Winterfell? The maester quivered. A map, your grace. The king leaned back in his chair. Get him out of here, he commanded. Leave the ravens. A vein was throbbing in his neck. Confine this gray wretch to one of the huts until I decide what is to be done with him.
See, here's the thing about George R. R. Martin is he's very funny. And I really love Stannis's like kind of just dry, dark, cold humor here. It's really compelling to read for sure. And
Yeah,
he gets stuff done. He gets to the truth of the matter, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, scoop out your eyeball with a spoon and then very coldly like, oh, I wouldn't want to leave you not be able to do your job. I mean, you can do it with one eye, right? Yeah, okay, that's cool. Yeah, so one more time. What was that that you sent to Winterfell?
Exactly.
Maps. Pretty funny. So cold but effective. And you kind of wish that Ned Stark had a little bit of that wisdom and skill, you know. But,
yeah. Not that Ned Stark wasn't skillful. He just had too much innocence, too much naivete. You know.
Yeah. So interesting. And there's somewhat similar characters. They both have a lot of honor. Obviously, Ned's a lot nicer. You know, you'd rather hang out with Ned. But in any case, they have a grudging respect for each other based on that honor. Now, the important thing here is that Stannis has just found out that Ramsay is coming for him. Ramsay has a map. Ramsay is going to be overconfident. He thinks he's going to take Stannis by surprise. And now Stannis can use this to his advantage.
Yeah, nothing is more dangerous in battle than being like kind of overconfident. So yeah, I'll be curious to see in the way in which Stannis thwarts Ramsay's plan, because like I said before, there's a lot of examples throughout history of Stannis being a very capable military commander. And Ramsay, I mean, he's cool or whatever, but he's no Stannis. So I feel like this will be a good opportunity for us to see Stannis have a really big win when so often he's been thwarted. The only other example we have of him really winning was north of the Wall, that's not really a win. It's against wildlings, and they don't really have any like
it was
not really
win.
Organized in the same way. But yeah, this will be cool to see.
It was definitely epic and dramatic, but it was Stannis with the advantage. And his whole thing is when he's able to do a lot with a little. So I think that's what we're going to see here. And he also successfully takes the Karstarks into hand after exposing their deception with the maester there. He correctly surmises that the soldiers probably don't know about the treachery. And so he has them disarmed and confined to a long hall. But essentially, he rejects the idea of questioning them harshly. He's like, no, they don't. They probably didn't know anything. So they're essentially going to be loyal to Stannis, I think, and the honorable members of House Karstark, who will then be in charge, even if they're not on the spot there. So Stannis will probably still have those soldiers, is the point, and he dealt with them pretty wisely and justly without a lot of cruelty. And so that's just cool for Stannis there.
All right, so and then Stannis gets a lot of information from Theon. Theon lets him know.
Theon. He's chained up on the.
Yeah. So Theon lets him know that Bolton has about 5,000 to 6,000 men at Winterfell, which is more than Stannis. But he'll likely only send half of those initially, and he's probably going to send the ones that he really doesn't care about, meaning like non-Boltons, like Manderlys and Freys, first.
Yeah, and of course, like we were saying, the Freys and Manderlys were at each other's throats and will come for Stannis separately, with the Freys coming first. And Theon tells Stannis about that. He says, "Oh, the North remembers the Red Wedding, Lady Hornwood's fingers, the sack of Winterfell, Deepwood Motte, and Torrhen Square. They remember all of it." Then he thinks to himself, Brandon Rickon, they were only Miller's boys. Then he says, "Frey and Manderlys will never combine their strengths. They will come for you, but separately. Lord Ramsay will not be far behind them. He wants his bride back. He wants his reek." And then we also find out later that the Freys are sent out first, and then the Manderlys. So whatever traps Stannis has, the Freys are going to hit it first. That's the important thing.
They're cursed.
And,
telling you, the whole Frey house is cursed. We saw that in the Stoneheart chapter. I really believe that. Cursed.
Yeah. I think George is going to basically act that way. He's going to treat it that way. So otherwise, what's the point of building up all these, laws of the land that are old as the first men? So last thing I will say is that not only are the Freys and Manderlys at each other's throats or whatever, Bolton separates the fight that breaks out in the long haul, and Hostine straight up vows to kill Wyman as soon as he takes care of Stannis. And so, I mean, that's an uneasy alliance if ever. And this is again something that Stannis is going to turn against them.
Absolutely, they're not really together. I know this is a show only line, but I like when Robert Baratheon in the show is talking about a group of people united under one cause versus like a bunch of people like doing some. He says like a hand versus a fist. What's the difference?
For sure.
This is the difference. I feel like you got all these. They're all fighting amongst each other. No one's really like united. And like you said, Stannis will definitely use this to his advantage.
And to tee up what exactly the plan is, we've got this next quote from Theon kind of breaking it down here. And again, all these Theon quotes that we're giving you, these are from the Winds of Winter Theon chapter. It was the first Winds of Winter sample chapter to come out, actually. So you can find that online if you are curious. Here it goes.
20 green boys with spades, Theon told him. The snow fell heavily for days. So heavily you could not see the castle walls 10 yards away. No more than the men upon the battlements could see what was happening beyond those walls. So Crowfoot set his boys to digging pits outside the castle gates, then blew his horn to lure Lord Bolton out. Instead, he got the Freys. The snow had covered up the pits, so they rode right into them. Aenys broke his neck, I heard, but Sir Hostine only lost a horse, more's the pity. He will be very angry now. Strangely, Stannis smiled. Angry foes do not concern me. Anger makes men stupid, and Hostine Frey was stupid to begin with. If half of what I have heard of him is true, let him come. Oh, he will. Bolton has blundered, the king declared. All he had to do was sit inside his castle whilst we starved. Instead, he has sent some portion of his strength forth to give us battle. His knights will be horsed, ours must fight afoot. His men will be well nourished, ours will go into battle with empty bellies. It makes no matter. Sir Stupid, Lord Too Fat, the bastard, let them come. We hold the ground, and that I mean to turn to our advantage. The ground? Said Theon. What ground? Here? This misbegotten tower? This wretched little village? You have no high ground here, no walls to hide behind, no natural defenses? Yet.
All right, I love that line where it's like, Bolton has blundered. It's very declarative. Like, you can feel Stannis's confidence here,
And a little bit of alliteration, of course. The Bolton blunder.
Of course. Of course. It's a song of ice and fire. So, and Theon's asking, what ground, what natural defenses? Well, it's the ice lakes. They're like Swiss cheese. Here's the line it says, and this is one of the local, it's Ned Woods talking about how they've been fishing in the ice lakes. And it says, I know them lakes. You've been on them like maggots on a corpse, hundreds of you. Cut so many holes in the ice, it's a bloody wonder more haven't fallen through. Out by the island, there's a place looks like a cheese the rat's been at. He shook his head. Lakes are done. You fished them out.
So there's all these holes in this lake. It's not completely frozen, but it's been snowing, so it kind of looks like solid ground. And you've got the Freys who will be coming first that don't really know the North really at all. So they're in for probably a potentially really icy death, which is really cool because I know you like symbolism, how they like kind of did that to House Stark. They're all about ice in the North, and them, having this horrible frozen death is kind of like, yeah, you're getting what's coming to you. They're literally freezing.
Winter has come for a few of these Freys. They will sleep under the sea, under the ice lake. So pretty cool. And one of the things about the lakes is there's two of them, and there's a watchtower in the middle, and then there's islands on the lakes. So check this out. It says, the crofters' village stood between the two lakes, the larger dotted with small wooden islands that punched up through the ice like the frozen fists of some drowned giant. From one such island rose a weirwood, gnarled and ancient, its bole and branches white as the surrounding snows. So if you're running up on these lakes, it doesn't necessarily look like a big flat plain. There's two of them. There's a little town in the middle. One of them's got islands. There's a watchtower. So if they're in a hurry and they're pursuing an enemy, they're just going to run right out onto the lakes. And if enough of those holes, like the whole thing could collapse. If in fact, if you have a whole army, it's not even a matter of falling through the holes. The entire thing might just like sections of it might go. So
exactly. And yeah, I imagine if we actually see that scene happen, which we probably will, I imagine George R. Martin will just write it really like awesomely. I'm ready to see it.
That does sound actually pretty epic now that I think about it. And they could even use a little bit of fire to melt things. I mean, I know Melisandre's not there, but they might think to use fire because they got all the
take some inspiration. You know, he's adopted the fiery heart sigil and all.
So, and shout out, that theory originally was called the night lamp theory. It is out there on the internet if you want to read that one. It is in more detail about the watchtower as the night lamp being used to lure them out, and seems pretty solid. It's been accepted in the fandom as canon for a long time.
Hey everyone, LML popping in here with a little editor's note in post-production. The name of the fellow who wrote the shockingly well-researched night lamp theory is Cantus, Cantuse. And I really do recommend going over to cantus.wordpress.com and checking it out. He's got this thing hashed out really well, and all the details and foreshadowings that he found are very compelling and interesting, so don't miss that. Now back to the regular program.
Now, the cool thing about this is that, like we alluded to, Manderlys are definitely set. They've been thinking about flipping from House Bolton from the beginning. That's why they sent Davos off. So they are probably, what I see is like the Freys coming first, falling through the ice. Then the Manderlys get there and just kind of like, whoa, hold up. And somehow they're going to manage to talk. And if Stannis and Wyman can talk, if Wyman can convince them that Davos isn't actually dead, then they could definitely form an alliance. That's going to happen somehow. I really think so.
Yeah, that seems like it's definitely going to happen. It seems like it's been building towards Manderlys-Stannis alliance, I think. Because you've been keeping Davos alive and just having him there, so we'll see.
Yeah, what's the point? And the whole thing of rescuing Rickon is that now they have a Stark heir to claim. So you could say Wyman set up as the regent, for Rickon as the Prince of Winterfell. Now the North can rally around House Stark again. These folks will be loyal to Stannis, because Stannis wanted to install Jon as Lord of Winterfell so that he would have a loyal Stark Lord of Winterfell to rally the North under Stannis. So he can achieve that same thing if there can be some sort of Manderly Rickon setup at the end. But we'll get to that a little more in the Rickon episode, I suppose.
Scabos.
So.
I'm excited about that one, by the way.
Horny goats and hungry cannibals. I'll have to tape this one to my forehead.
That looks freaking ridiculous. No, you can't.
Yeah, I won't. All right, no comments in the comments feed about that. So Winterfell fake out could be coming. So the Ice Lakes is basically phase 1. Phase 3 is prophets. Phase 2 is the Winterfell fake out. Oh, what's phase 2? Phase 3. Underpants Snows reference. Right.
Yeah.
Anyways, Winterfell fake out. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'm super interested in the Winterfell fake out because Stannis might fake his death. And there's a few hints to this. So this is him talking to Justin Massey, and I'll just read this right here. It may be that we shall lose this battle. In Braavos you may hear that I am dead. It may even be true. You shall find my sellsword nonetheless. The knight hesitated. Your grace, if you are dead, you will avenge my death and seat my daughter on the Iron Throne or die in the attempt. So that's super cool. So Stannis is preparing to die. And it also seems like you might think I'm dead even if I'm not dead. So there could potentially be some kind of Trojan horse type thing going on here. And I love the story of Troy, the fall of the city Troy. By the way, the Netflix show on that is kind of good. So you might want to check that out if you like Troy, but it's neither here nor there. I really like that story. And I think it would be cool to see Stannis kind of do something like that. They come into Winterfell as like hostages or something, and then all hell breaks loose. Maybe the Manderley that's inside could help them with this a little bit. Maybe that could come into play here. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential for something like that to happen.
Yeah, that would be the idea. Is like some sort of pretend victory where the Manderlys and Stannis pretend like the Manderlys beat Stannis and the Freys beat Stannis. Maybe some of Stannis' soldiers can put on the Frey clothing to get led back into Winterfell. It's like a Trojan horse situation. Some of them open the gate and the rest of them come in. Something like that. The only complication there is that Ramsay is also on his way out. So if they're going to do some trickery, they're going to have to do it before Ramsay gets there, so Ramsay is fooled. But we'll have to see that. Or they might just kill Ramsay. Maybe they kill Ramsay, and Ramsay didn't write the pink letter, and the Manderlys lead the fake captive Stannis soldiers back in there. Yeah? Something like that. It's impossible to pin down, but you can see the direction it's going, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. I'm totally here for that.
And then another wild card is Mance Rayder. According to the pink letter, he's in a cage. However, that could be wrong. Ramsay could be lying. Mance could have written the letter. He could have been let out of the cage at some point. Ramsay might have wanted to mess with him. He might be like leading him at the front of his army on a leash. He could have escaped himself. He's Mance Rayder. He's very clever.
Yeah. I think Mance Rayder in a cage, man. I think he's out doing his own thing. I think he's got his own thing going on. This is a man that's been in the North. He's climbed the wall several times. He's been through this several times. He was there in Winterfell when Robert
he's been around,
was there, wasn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, he was there. So it was like
he served on the Night's Watch. He knows Corin Halfhand. He knows
how to not get caught. Most importantly, so it's like,
yeah, I love Mance Rayder. He's a great character, and I would be heartbroken if he's actually pretty much done at this point. I have to think he's going to do something super cool. And he was looking for the passages. He was looking for the crypts of Winterfell, and he was also looking for any sort of secret passages. He kept asking Theon how they got in. He had the washerwoman asking Theon, how did he take this Winterfell back when he did that in A Clash of Kings? If you remember, Bran Stark knows about these hidden wall walks or whatever inside the wall. You can get different levels of the castle. So Mance could find that and could bring that secret to Stannis at the right time. So part of taking the castle could be that. It could be a Trojan horse, could be a mix of both, but there's also those hidden passages for George to play with.
Heck yeah, I'm all about hidden secret passages. I'm totally a huge fan of all that stuff.
pull the wall sconce down,
yeah. Haunted Mansion.
So that's my most anticipated element of this entire battle is Mance. I just want to put myself down for that. But let's talk about Theon. Because
Theon Greyjoy.
Fan favorite Theon Greyjoy. Alfie Allen, great actor.
Oh, one of the
one of the characters that wasn't totally butchered for the most part.
They kept his essence. They didn't ugly him up, but they kept the essence of who he was, I think. He had a good arc.
That is one thing we will remind you. The show was a lot more graphic with showing the torture on page or on screen, whereas George he didn't show us the torture. He showed us Theon's broken psychology after the torture, but the torture was much worse in the books in the effect that it had to Theon. He's lost a bunch of fingers and toes. He's lost his member. His hair is white and falling out. He looks like an old man. Mm-hmm. He's just absolutely worse for wear.
Yeah, and George R. Martin is doing that thing where it's like you imagining what happened to him is always worse than anything they could ever show you. So, so it's very effective. And the reason to me that it's so effective is because Theon disappears at the end of A Clash of Kings and then shows up again in A Dance of Dragons as Reek. And it actually takes a little bit of reading before you realize this is Theon. So it's a great moment.
Oh, I remember that moment exactly when I was reading that chapter and I'm halfway through it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is Theon. And like, that was definitely like, mind-blowing GIF moment there.
Heck
that was, and just note, writer's tip to all you aspiring writers, like the world is dark. There's a lot of dark things. You don't have to write about them in vivid detail to include them in your story. Like, yes, people get tortured, but you don't have to write the scene where they get tortured. You can, it's better to come into Theon's head afterwards and you can see the effects of it without, it's almost more spooky that way, but it's also less like torture porn. So just,
I think he's always saying reek rhymes with leak. I wonder what is that all about? Is it just because it rhymes, or was there something going on with the leak or water, or I don't know. I've always wondered that. Was he water tortured or something? Rhymes with leak. I don't know. Like I said, imagining what happened is more powerful than showing. So yeah,
it is.
Lots of possibilities.
And so Theon is this broken character, and actually he's being turned into the Grey King. There's another, shout out to my old symbolism podcast, but his skin is gray and he's got an old man's flesh, gray hair. So he literally is turning into the Grey King, the founding legend of the Ironborn, which might be a nod to Theon, King Theon at the end of the story. But first we have to ask the question if Theon's even going to make it out of like the next couple chapters of Winds of Winter. Like, I want to believe that he's going to be king and he's got more stuff to happen, but he's in a desperate situation. So like we said, he's hanging up on the wall of the watchtower. It says, kicking feebly against the wall, his shoulders were in agony, his own weight tearing them from their sockets. How long had he been hanging there? Was it still night outside? The tower was windowless. He had no way to know. So pretty rough treatment there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. And pretty cold of Stannis. Pretty cold-hearted.
Yeah, and the reason why it's not really being treated very well is because he's going to be executed. Like, all the Northern Lords think Theon killed Bran and Rickon, so they are hot. As much as they are hot to kill Freys, they are hot to get Theon's blood. And so there's this really cool passage where the old gods seem to be present, and here it is.
The memory left Theon writhing in his chains. "Let me down," he pleaded. "Just for a little while. Then you can hang me back up again." Stannis Baratheon looked up at him, but did not answer. "Tree!" a raven cried. "Tree! Tree! Tree!" Then the other birds said, "Theon! Theon!" Clear as day, and Asha came striding through the door. "Then do the deed yourself, your grace." The chill in Asha's voice made Theon shiver in his chains. "Take him out across the lake to the islet where the weirwood grows, and strike his head off with that sorcerous sword you bear. That is how Eddard Stark would have done it. Theon slew Lord Eddard's sons. Give him to Lord Eddard's gods, the old gods of the north. Give him to the tree." And suddenly there came a wild thumping as the Maester's ravens hopped and flapped inside their cages, their black feathers flying as they beat against the bars with loud and raucous caws. "The tree!" one squawked. "The tree! The tree!" Whilst the second screamed only, "Theon! Theon! Theon!" Theon Greyjoy smiled. "They know my name," he thought.
So the cool thing about this quote is that before Asha comes in and recommends that he be given to the tree, the ravens say both tree and Theon. So it's like the old gods, whether that's Bran or Blood Raven or the Green Seer Hivemind or whatever, they want Theon badly, don't they?
And we hear Bran saying Theon's name at Winterfell and dance as well. So yeah, all this Theon stuff is pointing to the tree, the old gods, Bran, all that Blood Raven stuff. And then I don't want to bring up the show too much, but Theon is very close to a weirwood tree when he dies in the show, right? So that could potentially take it with a grain of salt, maybe relate to this in some tangential way. But yeah, so this is very curious passage.
And so we read earlier the description of the weirwood tree, but like we said, it's a snow white weirwood tree out in the middle of that island, and that's where Asha says he should be taken. And I just love the ravens. They're just like, they're flapping their wings, they're flopping up and down in their cages. They're just like, tree, Theon. Ah. That's spooky shit, man.
And then, if Theon is sacrificed to the tree, we know what happens when someone is like sacrificed and their blood is on the weirwood. Like they can potentially commune with the weirwood net. That's been a thing that's been in the north for a long time. So if that does happen, it seems pretty certain that Theon is just going to talk to Bran, right? He's going to suddenly like, "Oh, where am I?" And Bran's going to pop and be like, "Oh, hey, Theon, this is what I need you to do."
It'll be like Keanu Reeves meeting the designer in the Matrix room or something. No, I'm not sure. It seems more likely that he wants them out there by the weirwood tree so the old gods can pull something else that isn't Theon dying. But, I'm not sure what that is. It is really important that Bran, through the weirwood tree, said Theon's name. That was actually giving Theon back his name that was the first point at which he began to think about himself as Theon, and his chapters go back to being called Theon. And he's actually throwing his name at Stannis in this chapter. He's like, my name is Theon, instead when he's being called Turncloak. So that gives him the confidence and his Ironborn identity back a little bit. So I mean, I don't know. Like, the point is that Bran and the Weirwoods, they gave him his name, they gave him his power back. For what? So he can do something, right? Probably not just die.
I mean, and we know that the Weirwoods have power beyond like needing something to be sacrificed to them, right? There's you know, you've got the Ghost of Highheart, who like he gets dreams from the Weirwoods potentially. Like, so there's some kind of like aura emanating from them, something magic that's like just there. Like there's, like you said, like he communicates with Theon without even touching him. So yeah, so maybe there's something that can be triggered.
Well, there's potentially sort of a shamanic principle at play here. And the idea with shamans and, you know, wise men, wizard men, is that they kind of walk with one foot in the other world and one foot in the real world. And they're often a little half crazy and a little unbalanced because of that. It's a very Lovecraftian principle, like gazing into the void makes you insane. So Theon, having been broken down so much to this point, some of my friends like to argue that for him, the veil could be thinning a little bit. And that is one reason why Theon can hear a little bit better what the old gods are whispering, is because like he's suffered ego death. He's been broken down and reduced to nothing. He's a little crazy. Kind of like Patchface. Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Totally. So, yeah. There's this idea of like, you take away that, well, Theon is not exactly like this, but if you take away that higher like intelligence, that like more complicated thought, and it's more basic, then you can kind of just like accept the truth about reality, because you don't have all this like other stuff blocking you from seeing it like it really is.
Totally. Yeah. So it might be that Bran wants him out by the Weirwoods so that he can communicate something that he needs to do. Give him a vision, you know, something like that. So we'll have to see. There is a little bit also about Theon holding a knife. It's discussed a lot whether or not he can hold a knife. And Lady Barbrey points out he's got 4 fingers on his right hand. That's enough. So perhaps he will use a knife for some important, maybe he'll sacrifice somebody else in front of the Weirwood. Maybe Stannis will die in front of the Weirwood.
He does, I keep mentioning the show, but he does die like sitting on a tree in the show. So like, you know, I think about, you know, the Weirwoods and like blood. I can't help but think that if someone dies at that Weirwood, then it will feed some kind of magical act. It has to. Otherwise, what's the point? I don't know. It seems like it. And like you said, there's all this stuff that's leading Theon there. Definitely seem like something has to happen.
Honestly, it's a little bit like a mini parallel of Euron's Eldritch Apocalypse at Old Town. We've got one-eyed crow food, and we've got sorcery in a tower, and we've got something going to happen with the ocean that's going to kill a bunch of people. So it's, I don't know, a little bit of parallelism going on there.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely excited to see what happens with Theon out on the island. One other a couple bits of loose foreshadowing. Twice Theon describes jumping off the walls of Winterfell as flying. He says, "We flew." And of course, that's, you know, Bran's whole thing, falling and flying in the Greenseer dream. Euron talking about how should we know if we can fly if we don't leap from some tall tower. So that's Greenseer language there that's being thrown around. Yeah. And then, of course, there's this line where Roose is trying to figure out who's killing people in Winterfell. And this is back when Theon's in Winterfell. And Roose is basically threatening Theon. And he says, "You're free to go. Take care where you wander. Else it might be you we find upon the morrow, smiling a red smile." But a red smile is a very important piece of symbolism. Red smile is when your throat gets cut, and it gives you that red smile. But Weirwoods have a red smile that literally is a bloody cut. So the red smile is a Weirwood symbol. Theon getting a red smile means he could be merging with the Weirwood or becoming a Weirwood avatar or something like that. And take my word for it, I know it sounds a little weird when I just throw symbolism at you like that, but it's a very extensive symbol, the red smile. It's used all through the books. It's a really good Weirwood thing, so.
Heck yeah. And can I just say, that whole sequence with Theon at Winterfell, with Mance and his women doing all the murders is so cool. It's just beyond. It's one of the coolest things and I love that whole section.
Oh, Ghost in Winterfell chapter, man. That's some of George's best writing.
Yes.
So there we go. As you can see, We love a lot of these northern plot lines, and definitely a lot of you in the comments so far in the series have been begging us to get to the northern plot line. So here we are, guys. It's all frosty cold stuff from here on out, and you've got like 5 or 6 episodes coming of all the various northern plot lines. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to both of our channels. The whole playlist of this series is in the description below, and we'll see you soon with another Ideas of March, Winds of Winter predictions video.
Click the like if you enjoyed the video, guys. Peace.
Peace.